What's going on, everybody? I'm Ben Backus.
And I'm Kevin Paulin.
And welcome to the Fallen Up podcast, where we have conversations about how to turn obstacles into opportunities. Today, we bring to you a conversation we had with George Grothusen.
Yeah, George Grothusen is a program manager at a local recovery house in the city of New Haven, Connecticut. George is also a former EMT and a counselor in a wilderness program out in Arizona.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and I know going into it and reading up on him a little bit, just the array of things that he has done in his life, and so many of them have to do with helping others, right? Be it being an EMT, you'll find out he worked in a wilderness program, working with adolescents, and then later began working with adults struggling with substance use and other mental health disorders. In addition, George, he's a pretty great athlete, and that comes through in the conversation as well. And then just kind of things to pay attention to, a lot of the common things that we talk about, be it support systems, and then taking leaps of faith. I think that was a new topic that came in, where you'll see there was a point where George could have kind of stayed complacent and stayed in his comfort zone when given a really cool opportunity, and he didn't. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to share this conversation with everybody. So without further ado,
welcome to the Falling Up podcast.
So I'm the program manager at a recovery house. So what we do is we serve men and women who are in recovery, dealing with addiction, usually early addiction. It kind of varies by client, but 30 days to it really, we don't have a limit. If someone needs the help, we're not going to say, well, you've been sober for a year. This isn't the place for you, So just dealing with folks in recovery, providing, obviously it's a place to live. We're providing meals, we're providing case management services, referrals, and just support, And the way I look at it is my primary job, my focus is my staff. And I say that because if I make sure my staff are supported, feel empowered, feel like they can do their job, and I put them in a position to do that job, then they're going to serve the clients the best they can. And I have a lot of contact with clients. My office is right in the hallway with the bedrooms. It's open door, so people talk to me. But my main focus is make sure the staff are supported, make sure they feel like they have what they need so they can bring their best self to the table. Because if the staff's not healthy, the clients are not going to have a good experience because the staff are stressed. More so, they're always a little stressed, but more so than they need to be. But if it's a healthy staff that's works well with each other, with the clients are going to have a good experience, and we're going to be able to uplift them better than if bad management ruins. It's just ruins so much, of any environment, whether it's this environment or even any job. So, but yeah, that's what we do. We're a 27-bed facility, co-ed, like I said, and we're just trying to help people get to the next step. I look at our program as like the training wheels. You may be coming out of residential treatment that's, kind of locked down. You're just in there. Come to us. Now you're in the community. You're working. You're able to, have a job, go to your meetings, go to your clinical appointments, whatever. All the things you need to do with the support we provide. We're doing drug screens, obviously, just to keep people in point. We have curfews and different rules, the structure, but also the ability to fly. And you might fall. That's part of it. It's part of it is allowing people the chance to do that. And then if the program is not for them, we'll try to get them to somewhere that is going to help them better. Because someone not being able to be successful at my program, I tell people, because I'm the one who has to have the conversation that says, hey, you have to go. I have to sit people down and say that. And I tell them, dude, your journey in recovery is not over. Your time at recovery house is over, right? And we're going to get you somewhere. But this isn't the end of the line. Just pick yourself up. Maybe you need to go back to residential treatment. Maybe there's something else that a little higher level that you need. But whatever the case may be, I try to treat them with dignity and respect so that I'll talk to them like I'm talking to you. I'm not angry. I'm not like, why did you do that? They already feel bad that they messed up many times. So I'm just trying to say, listen, this is what we have to do. You can't, this environment's not going to work for you and the 26 other people. I can't have that here. It's not fair to, if you're struggling and you're on the edge, someone coming in messed up, it could push you over the edge. So just try to make it a clean, sober, safe environment for the residents. Yeah.
And that structure is so important. And I look at when I see individuals overcome substance abuse or any addictions for that matter, it really, structure is such a key factor, right? Where addiction implies this chaos. It implies moving in the direction the wind blows, and being able to have that structure and that predictability is so very helpful.
Yeah. So, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We zig when we should have zagged. I learned early on, I was way too lenient, coming in, trying to give everyone chance. But you have to, I was listening to the podcast you just had last week about saying no. And sometimes you have to draw the line,
right.
and it's going to help somebody in the long term rather than just letting them get through. Okay, they got through the program. No, you need to, hold people accountable so they can hopefully look at themselves and say, okay, I made some mistakes. Let me see how I can do better.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in how you got to this spot because in reading your, for lack of better terms, kind of resume, you've had so many different types of jobs, all in the helping field of some way to another, varying from like EMT to working in a wilderness program. So can you tell me a little bit about what that journey was like and what attracted you to the field of helping people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of stumbled into into all of this, because when I went to school, I was in school for photography. My degree's in art photography. Just being a creative person, and that was like my interest. But I learned pretty quick that the things you need to do to make money in photography, I just wasn't interested in. I don't like doing weddings. I don't particularly like the portrait scene. I did a couple, but I would say the big change for me was, the wilderness. I think the wilderness job that I spoke about, or in my paperwork, is where it started. I think because I got into that job, and what it is it was a program called Anasazi Foundation located in Mesa, Arizona, and the work we did was not. It was way out in the. You talked about that.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Way out, in the backcountry in Arizona, in the desert. So I got that job because I was just really interested in being out in the desert. Like initially, I was like, "Hey, this would be a really cool experience to just be able to be in the wilderness."
That was from Jersey. So was you in Jersey, applied in Jersey, or you were already on the West Coast?
No. So I was in New Jersey, Jersey City. Went to college there, everything degree. Yep. My fiance, who I'm with now, she had finished her master's degree for LPC, so she's looking for work. And we're like, hey, let's look wherever. And we just ended up in this small town in Arizona. This is kind of happenstance, But we uprooted and moved to Arizona. And, I didn't go straight into that. I worked at a bank, hated it, did a lot of different things. But I said, this is a beautiful place I'm living. I would like to experience it, on a different level, And I decided to go to the wilderness thing. But, that's what got me there. But meeting all the kids that I was working with, young kid, teenager age mostly, and like getting to connect with them. And when you're out there, it's different than if you're in a group in like a city setting, because you finish the group, you're out back to the same environment, most likely. And you're not really uprooted from that in the same way. So being out there and getting to just meet these young people and talk with them, and then see them week after week, because we would work 8-day shifts and be off 6, on 8, off 6. That's kind of how the rotation for staff went.
Okay.
So you'd be out there with no contact to the outside world, so things would happen and you don't know till you get back to the city. Like I think the Boston Marathon bombing happened, remember that?
Yeah.
I found out, after it got off, like, wow, like Linsanity happened when I was out there, and I found out about that, to go a different route.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking with all these kids and just hearing like their stories and seeing how they changed over time in that setting was really cool. And that's what had me stay there for a couple of years, because the rotation for staff at those places is usually pretty short. It's kids in college, do like, a quarter, or maybe half a year. and then move on. Because it takes a lot out of you too. The relationships are strained. You can't, people don't know when you're here, when you're gone. You're just out of contact for long periods of time.
Wow.
But that's what started me, was that program and working with the kids. And
did you ever get to follow up? So after someone graduated, did you ever get to hear about like how they were doing 6 months out, things like that?
Absolutely. It's funny you asked that, because as I was transitioning out of that job, because I just felt like it's time's up for this, this thing.
Yeah.
It just felt like I still wanted to do something working with people, but I felt like the wilderness part, it was just very taxing, and there was so many crazy stories of blizzards and things you got stuck in, and like. It was just, that came out of like that was.
What do you think that a wilderness program is most useful for? And
I think I can only speak to this one. I did do a training at Second Nature, is one in
that's where I went.
Oh, you did go to Second Nature?
I went to Second Nature out in Bend, Oregon.
Yeah. Oh, okay. They have multiple.
They had.
Okay.
I think they're since shut down or have been bought out by another company.
Okay. So I did a training there, and I didn't take the job. I didn't. Not to talk down on anything, but their philosophy and the way they did things, I just felt it didn't mesh with me, because you had to yell out a number every time you're like going to the bathroom and they take your shoes, they tarp you up, like all these different things. And I was like, because they had us be in the role of the kids to see what that was like, and I was like, this kind of doesn't feel like what I really wanted to be doing. It felt more like, confinement, but with the illusion that you're, it's like you're not in jail, but you kind of are. I felt like that a little bit.
And that's kind of what prompted me to ask the question, what is it useful for? Because in my time there, right, I went primarily because of substance abuse. And I think you're there. You pretty quickly early on learn that there is no length of time you're there for, right? It's kind of, you get to leave as change happens. And I'm sure for some families, they have an X amount of money that they can spend. And once that dries up, you got to leave. But then there's others who have, virtually infinite money to spend. And it's, you're able to leave the program when you actually demonstrate change.
Yeah.
And I think that for me certainly created this false sense of change.
But the system,
exactly. Right. After I did everything I could to get out and realized it wasn't going to happen, I'm like, oh, well, I just have to do it. And I'm sure in the program you were in, they have like different levels. Like you have like phase 1, 2, 3. Was that kind of a thing?
I feel like the Anasazi Foundation was a lot different. The philosophy was a lot different. It was a set amount of time that we called them young walkers. That was the name. All programs have different names and stuff, but, there was a progression for sure. Like you would come in and you would be in what they call rabbit stick, which is like when you first get there. And I did each part. I did like the regular part, the beginning part. I did the alumni part. So I got to see all pieces. But in the beginning, their first day out there, you're taking them from the office to the field. You're getting to know them like day one, and they're angry a lot of times. And we had the philosophy of, if someone's, angry with the fists, if you come at them with the fists, you're just gonna, you come at them with this. So they're going into that, soft kind of embrace, just try to get to know them and tell them, listen, you're here. We're going to do everything we can to make this experience for you the best it can be. And I really think you're going to get a lot out of it. And if they're angry, but they soften, over time. But it was generally like an 8-week period of time that they were out there. I mean, it was a bit of difference, but it wasn't, people weren't there for like a few weeks or a month. It was like standard amount of time. I just think it was the way that the culture of the staff, how we were supposed to treat them. Like if they tried to run away, we would just walk with them. We wouldn't try to stop them and say, well, what's going on? Where are you going? I'm out of here. And they take off. So someone will go shadow with them. And then they'll eventually realize like the natural consequence of doing that is you don't have your food, you don't have your shelter. It's going to rain. It's going to be hot. So we should probably get back to the group, but let them walk through that process themselves, not try to restrict them in that. So it was a lot of nature teaching you lessons,
I like that.
And we didn't force them to do things like, hey, here's how you make fire. Here's how you make a tarp. We taught them with the bow drill and all that, which that's one of the most badass skills. I'm so glad I have that skill. Okay, you don't want to set up your tarp? Cool. If it rains, you're going to get wet. And then sure enough, it'll rain. Okay, we'll help them make it, but let them to to learn these things. You know, if you don't ration your food, if you don't ration the sugar you have for your meals, you're not going to have any sugar after day 2. So kind of learning those lessons in their own time and own way, and let them kind of develop that. And it was different things. Drugs was definitely one of them. Some of the kids just had self-worth issues. Like they just didn't have any value in themselves, you know, mental health stuff, you know, and they would come out and they would be a different person because they would gain all, like, I can't believe I could hike all this distance. I could make a fire. I could build a shelter. I could ration my food. I can, you know, do all these things. So you would see this brightness in them.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
awesome.
that is where intuitively wilderness programs make sense for things like organic self-esteem problems or even depressive disorders, right? Where you're in this place where all of a sudden you don't sleep in a bed for a day or two. You don't eat whatever food you want for a day or two. You don't get a nice shower for a day or two. And you start to really value the little things in life.
Yeah.
And I think that is a beautiful thing. But going back to the program's philosophy, that is truly beautiful, where it's not this punitive, coming from a punitive standpoint, but it's coming from a natural consequence standpoint, which is a microcosm to life. And that there's a lot of value in that. And I think the program that I was at did take more of a punitive approach. And that was challenging, right? It definitely was challenging. And I don't think wilderness programs, and this is definitely just a bias, but I think it's important for me to be true to myself and put it out there. Like, I don't think there's a role in wilderness programs for addiction. I think that it maybe post addiction, meaning like you're not going, you're not being taken from your house and being put in, like, I just don't think there's that much of a role there. And I do think it, again, after if you want to have a little space between and then go, you can build really great skills. But
no, I hear you on that. You know, I think, if you're getting taken out of the environment for 8 weeks or whatever, and then you go back to the environment, not much has really happened for you because you can't get, I mean, there's some stuff in the Arizona desert you get your hands on.
Oh yeah.
But, I mean, is that the drugs aren't out there. You know, any city you go to, you can find them. You're not going to find them in the desert.
No,
so that's what you get away from the environment. But the after part is so important. The different things you work on while you're there is great, but it's not enough. It's just like 30-day treatment, like great, but what's after that?
Right. Exactly.
And it's all, I'm sorry for jumping in there. But it's also this idea too, that so much with any forms of anyone's struggle, being able to relate and to have strength in numbers is important. And how many, 15, 16 or teenagers will say that are going to wilderness programs are all struggling with right. There's so much variance in what they're struggling with. That I think going to a place that is specifically going to focus on this, building connection, learning those skills that really target, it can be really useful.
Yeah. To speak on that a little more, I think, because you asked me about alumni, and I do want to talk about that because I have a good thing about that. But as far as the addiction and being out there and stuff, I think anyone, regardless of whether or not you have any addiction problems, I think everyone should have the experience, at least the experience at the place I was. Because even as a staff member, I learned so much being out there, dealing with the natural consequences of nature, and you just gain such appreciation for what you have. Because after, day 6, you've been eating the food pack, you just start to have these fantasies about like, if I had a Snickers bar right now, like just little things,
those
just little
dreams
things. You would just, a slice of pizza would be so, or if you do a double and you're out for 16 days, you're just like, oh man, like if I could, and that's nothing compared to what the kids are going through. They're out there so much longer. But I think there's a lot to be gained just as, for yourself, but it's not going to fix addiction. It's not going to fix, it's what happens after. Because there's a lot of failure stories, like you said, I work the alumni part. So you're talking to the kids after they've finished the program, and there's a lot of slipping back, and there's a lot of regression. And that's kind of the sad part. But there are a lot of good stories too. There's one kid that he's a man now, he's in his 20s, but I'm in contact with him. He's local, one of the rare kids from the East Coast that went out there. And, I actually have seen him several times since, and we've been able, he's doing great. He's in school for physical therapy.
That's awesome.
So it's like, this helped him for sure. And I'm sure lots of other things, and his parents' involvement, and other things, but, he's doing really good. And, those stories are what keep you going and doing, the things that you do.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say I think that the difference of the punitive and holistic approach, maybe that's the right word. That's night and day. I think it's not the wilderness part. It's that part because from a prison DOC standpoint, prison doesn't rehabilitate anything. You know what I'm saying? And it's a whole punitive approach. It's a whole authoritarian approach to where y'all program was more person centered.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Do this happens. Don't do this happens. I think that's powerful, man.
I think part of it might be because of laws in different states. Is Utah had a lot of the wilderness programs, and I think some kids may have died like at some point. And there were big rules and laws about what they needed to do as far as like the hygiene and all these different safety things. I think Arizona was a little bit looser, so we can get away with, just kind of being a little bit more, okay, let's just go with the flow kind of thing. I think that may be part of it, but it's also just a standpoint from top to bottom of the program about how they looked at things, and just that's what made it the culture at that place.
Yeah. When you mentioned those dreams, man, that brought me right back. That brought me right back, especially coming in there, not smoking weed, going from smoking every single day to not, like right there, you already have vivid dreams. Then you take away every source of pleasure in my life.
The phones too.
Yeah, everything.
It's a big thing.
It's wild.
Not having the technology out there, it's really good because it forces you to be with yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I don't like myself.
Yeah.
And you have to, work through that.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Now you're saying cell phone. When I first went to prison, I used to feel like my phone was still vibrating in my pocket. Like the first, did you ever have that? Like you felt like your phone was on you?
You get phantom,
phantom.
Yeah, sure.
That thing is crazy.
Definitely. Then you get used to it after a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. But definitely taking that stuff away is a good. It's all distraction, And if you're,
for sure.
just like drugs and alcohol and all this, it's a distraction. It's a medication, for something else. And I think with the phones and you just get into this days of like whatever. That's a distraction from maybe another problem.
Yeah,
For sure.
The social media is hard, man, and I know, like, I'm so hyper aware of the role that plays in my life. I was off social media for, I want to say, the better part of 7 years, from like 2014 until pretty recently with all this. And I was telling Ryan last night, like, I can't do it anymore. I find myself totally unconscious going to my phone, opening up Instagram. Like, I can't do, I had to delete it. I have to stop. I can't. It is in a 3-month period of time or whatever it's been, it has directly impacted my life, and I feel less happy.
Yeah.
Just from that.
Yeah.
Just from that. And it's pretty powerful how quickly that happens.
It's addictive. And the companies all know how to hit those buttons in your brain to make it, to get that pleasure from it.
Yeah.
I have a folder in my phone. It says addict, and it has all the social media in there, and each app has a timer on it. So at the end of, like Instagram, I get 30 minutes. And at the end of that, it's like, time up. And then I can't open it anymore. Yeah.
But that's smart.
And it's so,
so it keeps you limited. It's just like,
That's
okay,
genius.
that's all I could do. So yeah.
And it's targeted to that too, right? And there's a brilliant podcast out there that I encourage every listener to this to listen to. It's called the Huberman Lab podcast. A gentleman named Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist out of Stanford. And he had an individual on who was an addiction specialist, and they talked about the role dopamine plays. And something that I never knew but does intuitively make sense is we have this baseline kind of like homeostasis level of dopamine that always needs to be there. So if something positive happens, right, we have an increase in dopamine. To come down to baseline, subconsciously this happens, our brain creates a level of pain. And often that pain is created through wanting more, right? So every time we go up, we have to equally come down to balance out. So if we're on our phone, right, we keep getting these spikes, what we're really doing is subconsciously creating this more pain, and then we want to do more, and then we have pain when we're not, right? So hearing that, it just totally changes the way I view pleasure and pain, and where they say like balance matters, right? Too much of any good thing, right? Too much of anything is not a good thing. And with social media, that just grabs on so quick. I think the two fastest I've noticed social media and like juuling or using any type of electronic nicotine system, like those things they mess with those levels so much.
Man, Say the podcast again.
So it's the Huberman Lab.
Huberman.
Yeah, and it is.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it really, really interesting, and again, just kind of helps shape the way we can think about.
Brian, beep that
pleasure and
podcast
pain.
name out. They're not paying.
I don't. No.
So
give it out. We got to give it out because this dude he's again. Scientist over at Stanford, and something he's all about is providing free science to everyone. So instead of putting all his stuff behind a paywall and having people have to subscribe, he's freely giving out some of the most useful, beneficial tips and tools to living a really productive life. So I'm going to promote that all day long.
Podcasts are great.
Yeah, they are.
So coming back.
Yeah, I didn't finish answering the question, did I?
We went in a lot of directions there.
You were asking how I got into what and that's when we went to the wilderness thing.
Yep.
So from the wilderness program, like I said, I transitioned to doing alumni work, which was in the building in Mesa. So it was, not in the wilderness. And I would go out once a week to do like a little in-field thing. But it was all alumni work. And while I was doing that, I was going to school for EMT. That's why my transition was, I'm interested in medical because I did the wilderness first responder training to work while I was working in wilderness. I said, well, let me do EMT. It seems like something I'd like, And so I finished that up, and I thought I was going to get a job on an ambulance, like on the reservation or something, because I lived next to San Carlos Reservation in the small town of Globe. I figured I'd get an ambulance job and do that, but I applied for a detox program in that town, and the manager called me like that day, like, hey, they needed EMTs. So I said, yeah. So I interviewed, I got that job, and that's how I started in my experience in the addiction field was with the EMT job, doing intakes, monitoring for withdrawal symptoms, running a health group, stuff like that at the detox. And somehow I ended up becoming the manager of the place.
From an EMT to the manager.
Yeah, it was after like a year or so. My boss was moving on to another position in the Valley and Mesa, Phoenix area. And he asked me, hey.
I work for a reason.
Yeah, the Valley, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not everyone knows what the Valley, well, the Valley's all over different places, but they call Phoenix the Valley. But so he's like, hey, have you ever thought about my job? And I'm like, no, your job looks terrible. I wouldn't want to do that at all. Because that was my first thought was, I work to live. I don't live to work, So I said, I like the EMT thing. I got my 3 days and I have 4 off. That's sweet, because it was 12-hour shifts.
Okay.
But I thought about it a little bit and I said, this might be a good experience. It might be something more. I always like to learn. Like you said, I have a lot of different jobs from retail to the bank to the wilderness, all this different stuff. I said, this might be interesting. To turn it down, at least applying for it would be silly. So I ended up applying, getting it, and doing that for several years. And it was the detox. It was an outpatient program and a crisis team. So they would go in the community and deal with usually mental health crisis situations rather than police.
Yep.
Which is great. I think that's a great intervention when appropriate.
Yeah.
So
they did that more in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a lot of that in Europe. Yeah.
Was there a point where you weren't going to apply for that job, or the whole time it was, I'm going to apply?
No, when he asked me, I was like, no, that sounds terrible.
So how did you, what was that process? Because I think this is an incredibly valuable moment for people where you get presented with this opportunity. The first initial gut shot reaction is to be like, fuck that. I don't want to do that.
How I felt.
To then being like, wait a minute, this could actually be a really good, can you take us through that kind of internal process?
Sure. Yeah. I think initially I looked at it and I said, okay, so he's managing this program. There's probably like 18 or so staff, EMTs, peer support, case management, nursing, like all different interdisciplinary team. And which was fine. Like I knew everyone, I had good relationships with everyone, but going from where I'm at, just a ground level, staff working with the clients, to now being the person that has to oversee everyone and be like the boss. And then having the on-call element, which I've been on call since then. I'm like, then it's like interrupting your life, so I'm thinking about all those pieces of why would I want to do that. And I'm also thinking, well, who am I? Like, why should I do this? Like, I'm just this kid from Jersey City. Like, I have that mentality of why should I be in this position? It could be somebody else, But one thing that made me considerate was one of the peer support I work with. I had two different peer support that I work with, Michael and Yvonne, great people. But Michael said to me, hey, Danny, was asking me about the position. Would Michael be interested in the position? He's like, oh no, brother, like, not for me, to stress is too much. He's like, but that EMT in there, he could be the guy for the job. And when I heard Michael say that he had that type of confidence in me, because I had so much respect for the peers I worked with, because they were like the backbone of the program,
right.
Because like they were the ones that were having groups with the clients every day, really talking them through because this is detox. This is like you used before you walked in the door. So you're coming in high, drunk, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's early point, and taking them through that period of time, and then the clients will be looking at them like, wow, they got the polo, community bridges, peer support. And they're like, oh, I want to be there, And so I had so much respect for my staff, because they helped me through a lot, because I didn't know anything. I'm an EMT. I'd never done drugs before. I didn't know what a speedball was. I didn't know I didn't know any of this stuff. I'd be like, hey, he just said, what is that?
Yeah.
But hearing him say that he, threw my name in the ring, in the hat, I was like, wow, that kind of held weight for me. And then just personally, I thought about it and I said, how long do I want to do EMT before I'm bored with that? I tend to get bored and want to do something else. So I said, this could be the next challenge, the next, step, and it's a good move just in a career standpoint for me too, to say, now I can have some management experience under my belt and kind of see what that looks like. Maybe I like it, maybe I don't, but I was just trying to be open to the idea of it and just kind of take the plunge and then learn it as I go, because I had no experience, in management myself.
So, and it sounds like the support of Michael.
Yeah.
That really.
Yeah, held a lot of weight. He was one of my. I mean, obviously I became manager. We know the story how it ends, right?
Right.
But he was like my right hand guy. I could rely on him for all sorts of things. And this respect I had there. It held a lot of weight when he said, I told Danny, that EMT in there, like, look at him, I was like, wow. It meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah,
that support system gave you the confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You need, no one does it alone.
There we go.
In anything.
There we go.
Whether it doesn't matter if you're, Jeff Bezos, right? You had help.
Yeah. Period.
Right? At some point, probably at a lot of points. It doesn't matter who you are. You can't do it alone. It takes a whole community, a whole village to, whatever they say, to village to raise a kid, right?
Yeah.
Or village for anything. You need support. It's just, we couldn't do it alone.
Yeah. So I sorry, I kind of brought that backwards, but I do think that there's so many times in everyone's life where they have maybe a potential new avenue is opening, and we shut it off before it even becomes an opportunity because of whether it's lack of self-confidence, whether it is complacency, whatever it may be, where if we're looking at it like worst case scenario, you weren't going to get the job. Right. Yeah. That was like the worst thing that was going to happen.
Or you get the job, worst case scenario.
So it's really, I just wanted to try to highlight that piece. Cause that reminded me a lot of Kevin's story too, where coming home from incarceration and just applying for every single job under the stars, whether you're qualified or not qualified. Right. Just trying to create this new path. So sorry, coming back.
Yeah. And then one more thing, sometimes not feeling like you deserve it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you're coming from. You could have lots of obstacles or not that many, but if you don't feel like you deserve something, then you're not going to get it. You have to feel like I can do this, have like the confidence and maybe you don't get it, but at least if you put the effort forward, you can feel good about it.
Yeah. And feeling like you deserve something. I love the saying, if you want to feel good, do good. Right. It starts way before actually doing whatever thing. It's all the little things that make up that self-confidence. Right. I think we think people are just like innately self-confident. Like some people just are born that way. And that's not the case. Self-confidence, like anything, it's a skill. It's something that you practice, and it's all the little things you do from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep that are going to equal self-confidence or self-hatred. Yeah. And it's our choice.
Yeah. But, So yeah, did that for a few years, and then we made the decision to come back east. Because New Jersey is where all family is. Everybody, my circle.
Yep.
We were out there for I think 9 years or something like that. We said let's go back east. She found a job, and then I got an interview, and we came back, and I interviewed, and then I ended up where I'm at now. It was like.
Oh, okay.
That type of transition, it was pretty quick. I went right into where I'm at now. It was, having the experience that I did in Arizona fit really well.
Oh, yeah.
To come, dealing with the same client base and all that. So very different environments, but it translated well. Yeah. So
sounds like Arizona's a little more intense.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. The job.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Because it was a detox, so I'm getting calls all times of the night because people having seizures, this and that, and people have had seizures fall on top of me, and it's more medically focused as well. Whereas this is clients are much more stable in the program that I'm running now. Generally.
Yeah. Generally. So, they should be at least 90 days sober at least.
Yeah, they should have. We do
60?
30 at least.
30?
Yeah.
Well, coming out of
because if you're coming out of Horizon or somewhere, you're going to be 30 days. So we just cut that out completely. So that's really early, but at least that.
At least 30.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Which is not a lot.
No, at all.
Not a lot.
At all.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
At all.
So to switch up the topic a little bit, it sounds like you're a really avid runner.
Yeah, and I hate running, but
wait, you hate running?
I hate running. I hate running. I'm not an avid runner. I would say I'm more of an avid like obstacle course, Ninja Warrior, climbing, like that kind of stuff. But obstacle course racing requires running, so I have to run. But I don't love running, so let's not get that twisted.
So if you could take an obstacle course and remove the running part.
Yeah, which is what Ninja is, but Ninja's really hard, like the obstacle.
Oh
very
my
hard.
God.
But,
so I'm interested in how you got into that, but I think I'm more interested in what role that plays in your life.
Oh, it's such a big part. How I get into it was, I've always been active. It's been a big part of my life. It was started as, as a kid, soccer, track, all that, because you were a soccer guy too.
Yeah. Him too?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So doing that to start, and then getting into basketball and becoming obsessed with that, playing just way too much on the hard concrete, messing my back. But, always very active. But, I just happened to stumble across what is this Spartan race thing? And decided to try one, and it just captured me. And I just love it. And then when I moved to Connecticut, I found Ninja Warrior because there were none in Arizona at the time. So I had the interest, but not the ability. So I go climbing twice a week. I go to Ninja Warrior once a week, and then I try to throw in some running begrudgingly, to try to keep that going. But the role that it plays, I feel like if I don't do that stuff, I would be in a bad place, mentally. It's kind of like I have to be active, otherwise. When COVID hit and everything shut down, it was really hard because I couldn't do any of those things,
Right.
But for me, it keeps me sane. It keeps me from having anxiety or depression. I always try to tell people, be active. I know everybody doesn't have the same path or way to, to deal with things, but for me, that works. So I always tell people try it.
And you're not unique in that, right? And this really hard part about being human is we don't know what we don't know, right? So for someone who's never exercised, whether it be that go for a 30-minute walk or do a Spartan race, right?
Yeah.
All you're basing that off of is this idea of what it is. Hey, I have to get up, do something that I don't want to do, and I have no idea how I'm going to feel. Yet when you're done doing whatever that is, how do you feel immediately after?
Yeah. I mean, depends. If you're a little masochistic, you feel great.
Yeah.
You feel I'm so trash. This is awesome. For me, it feels like when I push myself to the limit after I'm done, I feel satisfied. I did that.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the thing. That is nobody, and I mean nobody, can be their best self without exercise. It is impossible. Yeah. It is it is a fundamental part of being human. Exercise, sleep, hydration, diet. If we don't have those things locked in, we might be able to be 80% of ourselves, but we're never going to be. That's it.
Yeah.
And seeing people like yourself who are the most extreme form, because can you feel for people who don't know what a Spartan race is?
Well, sure, yeah. So there's different, it's called OCR, or the sport is obstacle course racing, OCR. So there's a lot of different ones. There's Spartan, there's Tough Mudder, Savage Race, boat. There's tons of them. Spartan's one of the biggest, like most well known. But essentially, they're different distances. It could be a 5K, it could be 6 miles, 15 miles. I'm actually doing a 30-mile one in October.
Really?
So I should start running probably.
Wow.
It's probably good to start training now, month out.
But essentially,
30 miles.
so it's not a running race in the sense, you're just running. There's a set number of obstacles that are in your way, and they range from, walls you got to climb over. Maybe you got to go through water or mud. Maybe it's like gymnastic rings and bars and different types of things you have to climb on. Cargo nets. The obstacles vary by race, but it's essentially running and doing obstacles. And they all have different styles. Like a Spartan race, if you fail an obstacle, you have to do 30 burpees. Burpees they change you. You're a different man after 30 burpees.
Burpees.
So there's penalties. Some of them don't. They're more about the fun. So it's all different styles or feels to it. But essentially, it's running and doing obstacles and mud usually.
Okay.
Is what it comes down to. But that's kind of what.
Are you ever going to try to go on or have you tried to go on American Ninja?
I applied once, and I got a call back from like one of the director people.
Yeah.
They wanted me to I'm not like the most animated person, and to get on TV, they need to have a reason to have you. They want to have people that like my story, which I told my story, but they're like, you do reshoot the video, more excitement, because they need to bring it to the producers to get them to pick, because thousands of people apply and like a very few amount get on. Right. And then COVID hit, and they ended up cutting the amount of people by like a fraction of the amount. Yeah. So I haven't applied again. I'm not good enough to be a contender on the show. Like, don't get me wrong.
You don't think so?
I can probably get through the first stage, but I just love it.
That's an incredible feat in and of itself. The fact that you could even be considered for the show puts you in the top percent of.
I guess compared to the normal guy off the street, I'm probably pretty good. But I'm comparing myself to the people I see at the gym who are like on the show, and I don't hold a candle to them.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, and they look like normal guys, but they're just incredible athletes. And I'm new to the sport too. It's only been a few years I've been doing it. So,
and has there been a time recently where you've gotten away from exercise? Maybe like any.
Yes.
And what can you walk us through what that does to you mentally, physically? How is life without?
It messes me up. I had hernia surgery in April.
Ooh.
And I had a race in June. So I was like, I need to be ready for this race in June. And I couldn't train at all because,
Yeah.
But so I, the first week you do nothing. And then after that, you can start walking and doing stuff. And I probably did too much too soon, most likely, because that's just my personality. But, for good 2 months, I wasn't doing any ninja, any running, I was just taking walks. And it killed me inside. Because I feel like, I need to come to grips with this as I get older, that I'm, Father Time's undefeated.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, I need to make changes and limitations to maybe some things, right? But I put so much of my self-worth in my physical self that I'm like, okay, you need to understand that, you can't value yourself based on just this aspect of you. But it was hard. It was 2 months of just, come on, I want to get back to it. And then being able to ramp back up slowly. And then now I'm back to full speed.
Yeah. Full speed ahead.
See, I fall off when I don't even get surgery. I'd just be doing good for a little bit and then be like, I'm just going to have one lazy day.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then a lazy day turns into a week. And before you know it, I'm thinking, dude, I feel all messed up. Why? Yeah. What's wrong with me? And then I'm like, oh, wait, well, I haven't moved my body in a week. Okay. This is, I think I could probably fix this if I just stop being lazy and take some action.
Yeah. So, not really, because so I have a bare minimum. I go climbing twice, I do ninja once. So I always do that. That's like the entry fee.
Okay.
So I always am going to do that. I may not go running, and then I beat myself up about not going running, but I'm always doing at least a few days a week, something.
Okay.
So I there's not a time other than the surgery where I really, COVID, maybe there was a period where I got low because I was like, and use the pandemic as an excuse to be lazy, But generally, I'm very hard on myself and strict to say, okay, you're going to do this, this, this. And just because you got to keep your strength up and your finger strength and your grip and all that stuff to be able to,
Yeah, it's that, but it's also the non-physical attributes of it where you just said, hey, I'm very strict. That discipline. And I think one of the best ways in life that I've found for me to build discipline is through exercise and eating right. Because those are things that I very rarely want to do. Yeah. But when I do it, I feel good. I feel really, really good. And yeah, there's so many reasons not to.
Yeah, it's so
Right.
easy.
It's
so much
easy
easier
not
to
to.
not do it or to eat bad, you know.
Right.
Oh,
and
of course.
and I'm like binary, on or off. Like I can't do 50%. It's either 100 or 0.
Yeah.
So I have to like try to measure that, you know. And like with food, like I eat the same lunch every day. Like it's a smoothie and the salad that I make, and I have that at work every day. And the staff laughs at me because they know at 2:00 here comes George with a salad. But like it keeps me on point with the diet part,
Yep.
you know. And if I don't do that, I will fall off the rails. I will absolutely fall off the rails. So I keep certain things that are like non-negotiable.
Where did that discipline start from? Like where?
I don't know. I think that I just have to do it because if I don't, I don't know where I'll be. It's like why I've been terrified to like touch any substance, like because it's like if I go down that road, I'm probably gonna go down that road.
I got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
I was talking to
I got you.
I was talking to Ryan Redcheeks last night about this. Like for some reason, and balance just is a hard thing for me. And with the things that I like in life, I'm 100%. And I've gotten better at finding that balance, I think, over the years. But yeah, I just have this very similar where if something is appealing to me, it's not like I dip a toe in. It's I'm flopping in.
Yeah.
It's really it's 100% that. Like, oh, I'm going to go on a hike. I'm going to go on the longest hike possible.
I got you.
I'm going to go, like I went to Africa actually during COVID. So
really
worked out. But
nice.
November, we did Kilimanjaro. So we hiked Kilimanjaro. So it's, highest peak in the continent, one of the 7 summits. It was amazing. It was an empty mountain because
no one's
it was
there.
us and the guides. That was it.
Wow.
But like, that's how I look at things. Like if you're going to do something, do it to the max, and that's not a good thing necessarily.
Time and a place. Time and a
I was
place.
gonna say,
Yeah,
depending what it is.
Yeah, time. And I think genuinely erring on the side of giving it your all and everything you do is probably a really good thing. And I think you could probably separate giving it from your all to going all out, right? Meaning I think those can be 2 different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting where I do think whether it's a hereditary thing or kind of nurture versus nature, if I grow up in a household or I witness people who are always taking and doing 100% in everything they do, maybe I'm more likely to do that. But yeah, I've never gotten hey, I'm just going to dabble in something a little bit.
Yeah, it's very hard to dabble.
Me too.
I'm in or I'm out.
Yeah, I'm the same way though. I don't know how to just dabble. I don't even know if that's a thing.
And I purposely don't do things sometimes where I'm like, do I want to? I know where this is going to go. So I'm like, do I want to get this hobby? Because I have these other things I'm doing. And if I do this, it's going to take over my life. So I have to be careful. What do I choose to like hone in on?
But that is I'm really glad you brought that up because I think that is one of the most underrated parts a part of life is like, or wellness is how do we prioritize life?
Right,
we have 168 hours in a week. I don't know about you guys. I need 8 hours of sleep. That's my number. So that leaves me with pretty much 100 hours to live.
Right.
Work, diet, right?
Yeah,
Socializing, all of these things. And yeah, you're right. When you find a hobby that can be very time consuming or take away from other parts, it can be hard to say, hey, how do I determine what I want to spend my time doing?
Yeah.
How do you guys determine what you spend your time doing?
For me, it's whatever I'm most passionate about is what I'm doing. I just line it up with that. If I'm passionate about it, then I prioritize it.
So letting passion lead the way.
Yeah, yeah. Only because I've been able to direct my passion into positive stuff. Even before the stuff when I was doing negative activities, I was still passionate about it. You know what I mean? So as long as I make sure it's positive, that's how I rank it.
Yeah, this is like a pertinent topic in my life now, where I'm trying to figure out like where I want to put my time, and it's so hard. Where at first I let like passion really lead the way. And then what I was passionate about, it almost felt like I was burning out on that. And when that happened, it was like, oh shit, now my life feels real empty. So now I'm trying to reel the ropes back and be like, how do I, again, come back and find that balance point, that work-life balance that has definitely eluded me to this point. Trying to be like, hey, I want to be able to spend X amount of time doing this, this, and this. But if I'm working 80 hours a week, I can't do any of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
because what happens when one of those things isn't available?
Right.
It's like when people come to my program and they just want to work right away and they're working way too many hours. What happens if that job goes away? If you lose that job, that's your whole life. What's left? Right. Where's the recovery network? Where's the other things you need to do? Same thing with anything.
But and that's the thing that I think the word addiction, when we hear it, we immediately think of substance use. I think that's the number one thing, right? But anything can be an addiction. And that's why I define it as, hey, I'm spending an excessive amount of time doing one thing. And as a result, I neglect, no matter what, I neglect other areas of my life. And then I feel crappy. But you're spot on.
Everybody has something, There's no doubt about it. Like, I sacrifice sleep because of video games. I'd be up too late and you're like, oh no, I have to get up. I only get 5 hours, So it doesn't have to be a substance. It absolutely doesn't. It can be all kinds of things, Even positives can overtake too much of your life.
Without a doubt. It's really being mindful of that. And it's hard because in the moment, it's hard to see, at least for me. In the moment when I'm doing anything, sometimes it could be hard to like take that mile view approach. I'm so like in that quarter mile right up that sometimes I can't see that one part of my life is beginning to really outweigh all the others. And do you guys ever experience that, or is that unique?
Like when one thing outweighs everything?
Yeah. And I'm just thinking for myself, like what are some things I could put in place that can kind of tell me when that is happening, that wait a minute, getting a little too consumed with this one thing.
For me, it's usually if I'm begrudgingly doing it, that's when I say, whoa, I'm already too deep. I'm already at a point where, you know what I mean? Like, anything, like let's say, I don't know, anything. I don't even, because I don't want to say something but let's say one of the things that we're into is happening, and I'm like, I gotta go do this too. And once I'm starting to do that, there's an issue.
Yeah,
there's a big issue because if I'm passionate about it, I should love to do it. That was the whole point of me putting the time in. And if I'm putting too much time in and I'm not expressing that love and more resentment,
right,
then we got an issue.
And I think that's where prioritizing comes in, because there's some things I can speak like in building a business, like there was so many times that I felt that way, but I needed to push through that to get to the other side, because that's just part of that experience, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Whereas if it is something that's more of a hobby and I start to feel that way, then that's a red flag, right? Because this is a supplement to my life. And if that supplement is taking away, it's no longer a supplement is in addition to.
Right.
If it's taken away, it's no longer a supplement, right? It's becoming a problem. Whereas for other things like work isn't really a supplement. It is a foundation.
Right.
And I think it's a foundation for most people's life. Like that is where they, not only for financial incentives, but for meaning, purpose, connection, relationships, right? It is a pillar of one's life.
See, that's where it's a gray area for me, because all the stuff that I'm into now, I purposely make sure it lines up with my passions. You know what I mean? Anything that I'm doing. So it's like, I have to push through because now I'm mixing my passion with income and business. But then at the same time, I'm being a little I'm begrudgingly pushing through because it's hard. You know what I'm saying? And that's where you can't stop and you got to go through it. And it's just one of those things where I keep telling myself it gets greater later.
Right. And it does most of the time, right?
Yeah.
But there's always going to be those periods. And I think that's where we talked about it last week, right? Like don't quit before the miracle happens.
Yeah. There you go.
There's going to be a time if something is meaningful, right? It doesn't get done in a month. It doesn't get done in 6 months. It often doesn't get done in a year, 2 years, or 5 years. And in that period of time, it is reasonable to believe that the sexiness is going to wear off. At times, the motivation or desire is going to wean down. And in those moments, how we get through to get to the other side, where that passion comes back and that flame comes back, right? That is the most important part. And I don't think there's a way to avoid that, right? It would be really interesting talking to guys like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos and being like, hey, how many times did you not want to show up to work, or were you so burnt out that you didn't think you could make it through? Yet now you're sitting with two of the most, I mean, in Elon's case, four of the most, and Bezos' case, one of the most successful companies ever. So,
you got to be,
you know,
I mean, there's sacrifice in that, you know. You have to. I mean, they definitely sacrificed things that maybe some we're not willing to sacrifice to get those things. Yeah. And is it worth it? Who knows? Yeah. We're not. None of us are getting out of here alive, you know.
That's so the truth.
Like, you know, not saying that what they did isn't worth it, but who knows? I mean, I don't know what they had to give up.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I'm sure it was a passion too. So it doesn't feel like you're giving anything up. But relationships, you know, stuff like that. If you're working 80 hours a week, how much time can you spend with the kids? This and that, you know?
Yeah, probably not much.
Yeah.
I can speak for myself. Not much.
Yeah. That's what my dad and my biological dad, he was there, but he wasn't there because he was working a million hours a week, like crazy. Full-time pastor, full-time employment. And he wasn't at my soccer games. Mm-hmm. He was at none of them. So.
How'd that play out, like, growing up?
Oh, well, our relationship started incredible. I was the favorite. You know what I'm saying? And they'll tell my siblings will tell you, like, I was his favorite. I was basically looked the most like him. So as a kid, my whole purpose was to please him. So I only played soccer because he played soccer. So when I played soccer and I got these accolades and he wasn't there for these pizza parties, these trophies, these, you know, everybody got their parents bringing orange peels. I'm dolo. You know what I mean? So looking back, it created a resentment, you know, and I didn't care that he had to go to work because that's what I'm supposed to eat. Well, he's at work. You follow me? It's not his fault. But, you know, yeah, it's not his fault, but it don't feel like it's not his fault. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was definitely a resentment that led throughout into my adulthood that I didn't really realize until therapy, really. You know what I'm saying? And but yeah, it was that resentment, man. But he was trying to take care of the house, you know. Immigrant father, you know, gotta do what he gotta do, you know. Certain jobs aren't available to him, so he has to take what he can, and that means, you know, a lot of hours. So I get it, but it still hurted. But I look back, I feel like I was selfish for that resentment. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel bad. Like, either way, I feel bad when it comes to that. So I would say, yeah. And I think our relationship is certainly strained even now because of all that trauma. Because I was terrible. That's when I started misbehaving. That's when I started misbehaving. And his way to parent was, I'm not there, but when I'm there, back to being punitive, you know? So now I really got resentment, you know? So I think, yeah, that's how that played out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So kind of coming back, I know we're running kind of low on time.
Yeah.
In having all this experience from working with adolescents to now working with the program you work for, it's a woman's program, or is it
right now?
Yes,
it's co-ed.
It's co-ed. Okay. Yeah. And primarily you're working just with adults.
It's adults.
Okay.
Yeah.
So having the whole spectrum, what are some of the areas that you notice people either struggle with the most in overcoming these great obstacles like addiction?
What areas?
Yeah. What would you, like, if you were to say, hey, this is a really common mistake that I get to watch people make on a regular basis, be it again in your time in the wilderness or your time now, what comes to mind?
I mean, it's, you know, it's going to sound like the same old thing everyone says, but people, places, and things I feel like, especially now, I mean, with the wilderness at that moment, no, you can't get back in the environment, but they do when they come home, you know. But as far as the right now, I mean, in New Haven, you know, a lot of times folks end up going back to the same things that got them where they are now, you know. It's like if you're on a diet and you don't want to eat ice cream, don't hang out at the ice cream shop. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you have to completely uproot a lot of times. And, you know, you spoke about this too. Sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's family. And how do you do that? You know, it's not an easy
Very
thing,
tough.
but I really do think that the thing I see the most with the clients I'm dealing with is, you know, they have the desire to stop using. You know, that's there to whatever degree, some higher, some lower, but then the commitment to changing, you know, behaviors and changing just location, like being in a new place, you know, where you can start over. I just see a lot of people go back to, even though they know, oh, Hartford's not the place for me, they end up back in Hartford, or Bridgeport's not for me, they're in Bridgeport, you know, or New Haven, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I really feel like that's such a big part of it, because I mean, you can find drugs anywhere if you want to, but if you don't want to find them, it's much easier if you're not bumping into the people that you were running with.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
because, or even if you just to being in the same place, it brings you back. You know,
Right.
if you used in this room and you're in this room, you're going to just be like either creeped out, feeling weird, or feeling like you want to go do it again. So I think the environment is so just important to that whole.
Yeah, and there's two things that come to mind. Every choice someone makes, right? There's two things that always go into it: opportunity and emotion, right? So the opportunity, be it just like you said, it's there. The emotion, the fuck it, I'm going to do it, right? And what do you think's the easiest thing to control? Opportunity or emotion?
Emotion.
So the easiest thing to control is opportunity, because we have no control over emotion. I don't have control to this day when the fuck it comes into my mind, right?
You don't think so?
Zero. No one does, right? If you, no one, we build skills to be able to control it, right? Like when I had an impulse to get on a plane and fly across the country this week, right? That was an emotion that was like, fuck it, let me go do this because I really want to. Fortunately, I talked to a bunch of people and the answer was like, that's a poor idea. So I didn't do it. Had I not had those people in my life, the opportunity was there. The emotion was there. It lined up. I would have gotten on a plane and flown across the country. Right. And it's the same thing when people are using substances. So I wake up in the morning. How many times do I wake up and say, I'm not going to get high today? But all of a sudden I go to the perfect place, or I don't even, I'm just sitting in my kitchen and that emotion creeps in. Fuck it, I want to get high, right? Well, if I'm in a spot where I can't do it, I'm not going to get high. If I'm in a spot where it's there, those two things line up, I'm going to do it. So I think, like you said, if I put the focus on how do I limit the opportunity, truly cut that out, now I can work on building these skills to learn how to deal with that emotion. And certainly people, places, and then you can apply that to far more than just addiction, right?
Yeah, you're right. I just for devil's advocate perspective, when you from the inner city and you just left the rehab and you left the recovery house and now you got to go live back on Whaley and you walk outside, it's the trap. I think, that's why I was thinking emotion is more depending on your situation. You have the opportunity is there. You in the trap. Right. That is there.
And, and then again,
people nodding off across the street. People, you know what I'm saying?
And it's what's in your control at that point. So if I was to limit opportunity in that, well, I would make sure that I don't have anything in my house. I would build people in my life that are going to get in the way of me getting high.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing to limit the opportunity, because again, there's not much. Like, we're having a conversation now. I'm speaking to you. I don't know the next thought that's going to come into my head. I don't know the next word that's going to come out of my mouth. I hope it sounds right? But so many times we don't have control over our thoughts. They come. It's what we do with it that we begin to have control over. But that takes time, and that takes a lot of practice of doing specific things. So if my goal is, hey, I've been doing the same thing for years and years and years, and all of a sudden I think magically my neurocircuitry is going to be rewired, my thoughts are going to be rewired. Well, that's not how life works, right? 9 miles in, 9 miles out every time. So I think being able to focus on, George, what you were saying, in limiting that opportunity and changing those people, places, and things, that is working smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, and it's not an easy solution, because, like you said, if you're from a place and you go back to that place, you're there, like, right? But a lot of times this is like a life and death situation. So sometimes it takes an extreme solution. So it's like, hey, that might mean I don't know this other place. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm not going back to where I know. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do, because you don't know anything but that. you know, but so, I mean, I've heard the story of people doing that, uprooting and just saying, I'm out of here. And that's the thing that got them over the hump, because they just kept being back in the same spot. Even if they tried as hard as they could, people were coming around. And how many times can you say no before you say yes?
Yeah.
Right. We had Cooper Denegri on the podcast, and that's how he was able to get clean, was going from Connecticut, where he knew everything and everyone, to Asheville, North Carolina. And that was exactly what was able to get him over the hump.
Having the means to do that, that's the tricky part, right? Because you have to have, I mean, not necessarily you can just go, but that's going to be really hard.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's dependent. Or
if there's programming out of state, possibly, you know, maybe something like that could work. I don't know, but it's not an easy answer, but I think that's the biggest thing, that if you can control where you are, you can have a better chance. You know?
Yeah. And like you said, there so much is beginning to take on that personal responsibility. And if there's a will, there's a way, right? There's tons of programs in Connecticut alone that are long-term residential, where we're talking 90 plus days, 90 to 6 months to even a year, that I might not be able to get in immediately, but I can certainly get on a list to get in.
Oh yeah.
And then while you're there, then you can work on, you know, because a lot of these places you start working, saving money, then you can go get the apartment that's not where you were, but you have the help for that 6 to 8 months to get yourself established. You know,
saving up.
It's just hard not to go back sometimes. There's safety. There's like a feeling of home in places, even if it's a dysfunctional home. So that's it's not easy.
Yeah, well, it's been truly a pleasure getting to talk to you and kind of getting to know more of your story.
Thanks.
And all the wonderful work that you're doing and have done. So, as I'm sure you're familiar with, we always ask the special question to the guests. So if you were to say one piece of advice to someone who was really stuck and had just fallen down, or has been actively falling down for a period of time, what would you tell them?
So it's going to be different for everyone, but I think if you talked about passion, you know, I talk about, for myself, it's goals. Like if I'm working towards a goal, I feel like I have a purpose. You know, if you're just living day to day, you know, whether it's in your addiction or depression or whatever your struggle is, you know, if you don't have something that's you're reaching towards, and it could be anything, you know, for me, a lot of my goals are physical, but that keeps me grinding and it keeps me exerting myself. So it keeps me centered. And that's me. That's not everyone. That doesn't have to be everyone's, but I feel like having, you know, make a list, you know, like I have a bucket list that I have in a little notepad, and you know, some of them I'm probably never going to do. They're like some crazy stuff, but there's some attainable things. And just having things you're working towards, it doesn't have to be ground shattering, you know, like some people getting an apartment is a huge goal, huge goal, like almost unattainable at that moment to feel, right? But it doesn't, you know, it can be something like that, or it could be something simple. If you're, you know, like, oh man, I wish I lost a couple pounds. My goal is to be able to do one pull-up. It doesn't matter what it is. It just matters that you want it and you're going to work on it. And it can be anything. It, like, you know, like I said, I always go back to the physical, like, because that's how my brain kind of functions. But it doesn't matter what it is. One, it can be multiple goals, but having something that you're yearning for, wanting, and not just, I want to be clean. Like, that's an overarching, like, big goal, right? But what is a thing you can work towards and achieve, and then pick the next one and pick the next one? Because if you're working towards something and you accomplish it, you feel good. You feel like, wow, I can do this. So maybe I can get the bigger goal because I did this little goal, and then they build. And if they're goals that are building your life up, you're going to have that foundation of all these goals you're standing on and, you know, raising yourself up. So I think having goals.
I fucking love that answer, man. I do. And I'm drawing a blank on the woman's name. She's really brilliant, and one of her things is in overcoming addiction is just do. She said it doesn't matter what it is, but just do. Pick something and do it, because those goals those goals are broken down into little goals, and those little goals are broken down into even smaller goals, and it's a day at a time. And I know that's the thing that whenever I'm working with a client, I say break it down into a day at a time. They want to jump across the table and smack me, but I can't do, if I look at my day and I'm seeing 8 clients today, and I'm looking at my week and I have 40 clients in a week, I can't see 40 clients in a day, but I can see one at a time, and that makes it manageable. And if I have, hey, what do I need to do today? Let me chip away. All of a sudden, those 24 hours really add up, and then you knock down your first goal.
Yeah, and I also want to add visualization for me. So important. There's nothing that I've visualized myself doing that I haven't done, because even if people are like, that's ridiculous. Like, I had this goal when I graduated college to bike across the country. And before I did it, because I did do it, I visualized it. I thought about it. I said, what is it going to look like? I'm going to go through all these states. I've never been to anywhere. I lived in New Jersey. I've been to like Pennsylvania. But I went across all the states in the middle of the country on a bicycle. And I visualized it like, what's Kansas going to look like? What's it going to feel like when I'm pedaling? How heavy are the bags going to be? What am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? I visualize. Then I go, I get the bike. That's ready. Then I'll visualize, get the bags that go on the bike, get a sleeping bag, and that was a big goal that I visualized. And it doesn't have to be something stupid like biking across the country. Like, that does not everyone wants to do that, but that's my example of like, I broke it down, and it was a big thing that people are like, you can't do that. Your legs will fall off,
I want to talk about that. How much time we have?
We have to talk about this because one, it's incredible. But there's just in what you've said in the past 2 minutes, it's so incredibly helpful, because visualization, what that helps do is bring things to awareness.
And real.
Right?
Becomes real.
But that's it. And awareness becomes choices. Choices lead to better choices, better quality of life. Yeah. And right, it's like the idea, and I love it. If you want to, for anyone out there, if they're trying to buy a new car, right, you figure out what type of car you want. All of a sudden, you start seeing it everywhere. It's not because there's all of a sudden more cars. It's because you're aware of it and you're looking for it. Yeah. And when we look for it, we're gonna find it. And it's the same thing with the negative things. When people are like, "Oh, I can't catch a break," because you're not looking for a break. You're looking to stay in the mess, right? And visualizing its preparation,
and tell someone,
right.
Tell someone.
Makes it real.
Because that's what I did. Because I read this online. I'm like, I want to do this. And I looked up the route. I like visualized it. Like I told you all these things. Because it didn't just happen overnight. This is an idea I had. And then my mom's like, you can't do that. Because she's worried.
Of course.
Like, don't worry, Mom. People do it all the time. And then I told some people, I'm going to do this. And then it's like, wow, I have to do this because I said I was going to do it. It puts that extra little, the wind under your wings or whatever to say, tell someone, visualize. So have a goal, visualize it, tell someone you're going to do it. I think that's it.
And what that telling someone, just to put a word on that, it's accountability, right? It immediately creates accountability. And then I would take it a step further, is to say, tell multiple people.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because I can tell, if I just tell Kevin, I've fallen short many times, and Kevin's seen me fall short. So it doesn't mean that much, right? Like, but if I tell Kevin, I tell Ryan, I tell Jess, I tell all these people in my life, now it becomes a lot harder to look each one in the eye and be like, hey, I did
I bailed.
Kev might give me a break, but not all of them. They're not all giving me a break.
I
think that's it.
Well, again, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and I think just that last 2 minutes was so valuable, and then the whole conversation, I know it got me pumped up, so I'm grateful for you to be here.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right,
I thought I was going to be more nervous, but it was nice.
Oh, good.
You guys are good hosts.
Thank you. How long did it take you to go across country?
So it was over a summer, so it was like 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was just camping about 65 miles a day.
Yeah. Did you learn all those skills in that job, or did you already know all those like wilderness skills and survival skills?
Mostly on the job. Okay. I did do a wilderness program called NOLS before that, National Outdoor Leadership School. And I did like a 88-day expedition thing where we like hiked, climbed, and did like raft down the Rio. Was it canoeing? Yeah, canoeing. Yeah. Wow. So I did that prior to that, but yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so interested in that world. Yeah. I don't think I'll ever do it, but
we can talk more.
Yeah.
I'll take you on a race.
Yeah. I'll come to watch. Pompons.
I'll come and watch, and you do it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's crazy.
That's it.
Inception.
Word.
All right. Well, again, thank you. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks.
Falling Up Podcast.